back, family, to Sacred and Satisfied. I'm Dr. Belinda Newkirk, and if you've joined me for the last few weeks, we've been talking about the sexual views from different perspectives. And last week, we talked about the sex from the church's perspective, and we've talked about it the week before that from the home perspective, what you learn at home. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about it from your friend's perspective. That's right, from your friend's perspective, not just an associate or a friend. We're talking about from a saved friend's perspective, okay? From your saved friend's perspective, we're going to talk about that and what your own thoughts are about it as well, okay? Because we know that sometimes the loudest lies don't come from home or from church. They can come from your saved friends. They can come from your saved friends. And what I mean by that is because we confide in our saved friends as Christians. We have friends that we confide in. We go to them, we have conversations, and we talk to them about things that we entrust or information that we entrust, especially if we're in relationships or we're single or we're dating. And we confide in them how we feel when it comes down to our sex lives and what we're thinking of doing or what we may be talking about, engaging in, or conversations about things that we may have experienced or may not have experienced. And sometimes those conversations can go into depth about personal thoughts or past beliefs or stigmas, whatever the conversations may be. But we have trusted individuals in our lives as saved friends that we talk to. And we don't always get the right advice. We don't always get accurate information. So, this episode, we're going to be talking about sometimes those individuals that we entrust information that with and we get information from is not the right information all the time. Like I said, sometimes the loudest lies don't come from home or come from church. The other thing, they can come from your saved friends. They can tell you. And let's look at some of the things that some of your saved friends may talk to you about or how they may communicate with you about sex. Some of the things they may say to you. For instance, you may have a saved friend, if you're talking to them about sex, they may come to you and say, well, everybody's doing it. If you're talking to them about sex. And I call that the normalization trap. The normalization trap. What that means is they're saying you may as well go ahead and try it because you don't want to be left out. You don't want to feel like you uptight, the uncool Christian, the one that's old fashioned, unrelaxed. You may as well go ahead. You don't want to hadn't tried it yet. Just go ahead and try it. See what it feels like for yourself and get it done. That's what they're saying. You're saying, they're trying to tell you to normalize just get it done and don't worry about it. Just go for it. Then, they looking at the just try it, like I just said, that's the minimalization tactic. They're minimizing it. They looking at they taking an experience and the opportunity to a high stake moral decision in your life, and they minimalizing it as if it's nothing. That's what they're doing. They looking at you as like, okay, just put it in a situation like it just sort of happened mindset. You and him together, if you just go for it and y'all out and about and things just one thing lead to another, it just sort of happened. Opportunity presented itself and you just do it and it is what it is. It'll be all right. Looking at sex as a low stakes experience, or sensation seeking opportunity as if it's nothing. So they're minimizing it. All right. And then you're not looking at it, just try encounter. If you're going out there doing it and looking at the sexual regret or the shame and anxiety that you're going to feel when the devil start using it against you when you by yourself and start toying with your mind and your feelings when it goes against everything that you internalize and you believe. Then you might hear the things that you're just too strict when you start questioning them. about what your mind, what your beliefs are, and you're like, well, girl, I don't know, or come on, man, y'all don't know we should be going out here doing this. Guys go through it too, not just the females. God goes through it too. So that's the shame label, is what I call it, the shame label. You labeling your spiritual boundaries as strict. That's what they're saying. So they're telling you to redefine your moral convictions. They looking at that as a personal flaw. You got a lack of freedom. You need to let yourself go. Quit being so uptight. Got so many restrictions against you. You just being bound. So that's what they're doing. So they're shaming you. That's the shame label they putting out there. So like when they get ready to go on a trip or they get ready to go somewhere, they looking at you and they try to box you in and say, well, we don't need you with us because we don't want you to be judging us or but you over here in our room and you trying to put us over here and you being so uptight, you don't want to do what we do. You too strict for us. We gotta put you over there in that category. So they're trying to make you feel bad about being who you are. So they're shaming you. I call that the shame label. Trying to say that you're too strict because you put boundaries in place. And saying you got a lack of freedom. So then your mind start toying with yourself based on what they are saying because they're your saved friends, your Christian friends. So then you start second guessing yourself, listening to people that you entrust because they're saved, you're saved. Because this is how this happened. And then what you start doing, you start sneaking across enemy lines. You sneak across those enemy lines and start engaging in sex. That's what we do. You start engaging in sex secretly. And when you start engaging in sex secretly, you try it. And I call that the shattering. The shattering. And what I mean by that is that once you start engaging in sex, and because we have taught that sex is the profound spiritual union reserved for marriage, and for some they've been taught that it's the dangerous act that leads to immediate spiritual ruin once you start having sex and you're not married. So when you start having sex and you cross that enemy line, so to speak, because you're not married. And so now the devil, you done gave that entrance, you done open up that door and giving him that access. He starts to say, okay, full steam ahead. It doesn't feel like they said. It's not what they said. So the disconnect start. You open up the door, okay? They said try it. The shattering is why I call that part the stage. And then the disconnection starts. And that's because the physical reality is that it failed to match the heavenly description in your mind, the feelings that you thought that they felt like it should have felt like. So the gap between what they said, the narrative, the personal reality, so it led to sexual anxiety or the feeling that you are broken, that you ain't do something right, because you didn't feel what you were told. I done been there. I know what you thought. I know exactly what this feels like, what this looks like. So you feel like you did something wrong. You off, or the other person did something wrong. So you're like, well, what is going on with me? Am I doing something wrong? Did they do something wrong? This is nothing like they said. I didn't experience anything like they said it should be. So you start feeling awkward, unfulfilling, or sometimes it's physically painful, rather than spiritually awakening. Okay? So when it leads to it not being like the experience that you thought it should be, you lie. And I call that survival mechanism. And you start living the double life. You lie to your spiritual community to avoid the stigmatization or the religious backsliding label that they may put on you to say that, you don't want to be connected and be in church and feeling like they're going to judge you and say you ain't holy and you can't be a part of the group over here anymore, and they're going to shun you and be whispering about you. And then you can't go out there with your secular friends and then downplay the guilt that you feel with really want to tell them how you truly felt when you went and experienced this supposedly magnificent moment, and you ain't feel nothing that they talked about. You didn't experience anything that they said it's supposed to feel like. You supposed to come back with this grandiose story that explains to them how things went. And so you ain't got a story to tell. So you're going to lie to them to make like, yeah, it was all so great. And you going to hype it up. And yeah, I did this and I did that. And you got a grandiose story to tell. And you don't. So you may find yourself at church in your group, your life group or whatever you meeting at on Sundays. And you may engage in a sexual activity on a Friday night and explicitly lying when when you may have an accountability partner to prevent being excluded from the social support group when they're asking you how things going. So now you're in the phase of hiding. And I call this an avoidance of judgment. So as my mama used to say, now you're cloaking. Behavior cloaking. You're coping, you're covering. And that's because you associate the premarital sex with wickedness and corruption. And so you go to any extreme or length to conceal your actions and to avoid the purchase of the when you out and about and in public. You gonna do anything to make sure nobody is not identifying you as the individual out here backsliding or out here not being holy. So if you need to get any contraceptives or you got to buy some condoms, or guys, if you out here, you like, not me. I don't want nobody seeing me buying it. So that self-stigmatization that you don't want to be perceived to be seen out in public, you concealing things to hide. So individual, you might start distancing yourself from like close mentors or saved friends that's checking in on you, not because you no longer believe in God or not because you're not saved. It's because their presence acts as a monitoring identity to you that triggers internal guilt. So that's when you start distancing yourself. So then we go to this things the stage of pretend. I call this the performance identity, where you start pretending the performance of a false identity to bridge the gap between your actions and your beliefs. So you pretend that you are still abstinent to maintain your religious identity, which is often more noticeable part of your life, of your self-worth, than your sexual behavior. So you pretending, that's the performance identity, you putting on a show. That's why I call it performance identity. All right. So you as a saved person, you might continue to lead worship or teaching Sunday school, being if you teaching a lesson or Sunday school or in a ministry, actively engage in things that in church while you still actively engage in sexual relationships, but you pretending to adhere to everything that you're supposed to, that you believe others expect of you, to avoid the social punishment or exclusion, so to speak. That's what you're doing. But let's go in our Bibles to Romans 12 and 2 and see what it says. Go to Romans 12 and 2. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve that God's will is what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. God don't want you to conform to what everybody thinks and feels that you should. He said you will approve of what God's will is, not what everybody else's will is. So you are starting to think now and pretend and put on a show, because now you feel you've got to hide and cover so that you don't be ashamed or embarrassed for everybody else. So you start questioning yourself. That internal conflict hits. So your personal values or upbringing regarding sexual activity contrast with the beliefs or attitudes of your peers. Things that you know was right, you start contrasting with what they believe, or even what your saved peers. Now you're looking at them like, well, you saved, I'm saved, and how are we now different? So you might start questioning your own feelings, your own experiences. Then you start saying, well, am I weird? What is wrong with me? You comparing your own beliefs and your own behaviors to theirs. And you feeling like you're an outlier or somehow you abnormal. Then you start looking at, am I broken? You start experiencing guilt, discomfort, or a lack of expected positive feelings. Like, when you're engaging in or considering sexual activity, you lead into a sense of, am I flawed? What is going on? Why doesn't this feel right? So a sense of unease or disagreement when you're faced with pressure or different norms from them is like your saved peers. So where their actions or expectations don't align with your internal values. So the negative thoughts that they have a form of internal conflict and questions that lead to formation of negative thought patterns related to sex and desires does not align with your beliefs. So you develop you start to have your mind thinking totally opposite of everything that because they're saved and you're saved. So the difference in perspectives and internal feelings is a personal process that can be influenced by social dynamics. So what we got to understand is that we cannot allow even our saved peers, our saved people that we're around, to tell us things that does not conform to what God's word says. Okay? Because your experiences matters. Your experience matters. Even when it doesn't matter, even when it doesn't match others. Even when it doesn't match others. You must resist the normalization trap. Where society or even, say, friends attempt to redefine what is normal or expected regarding sex. Don't go along to get along. I don't care where it coming from. Now, desire is natural. Okay, sexual desire is a natural human emotion created by God, rather than something is sinful or evil. You gotta focus your focus on you gotta shift your focus from suppressing the feelings to managing the feelings. Action requires wisdom. Actions require wisdom. So what that means is that wisdom empowers you to make conscious, faith-aligned decisions rather than reacting to impulse or peer pressure. Wisdom involves understanding the potential consequences, emotional, spiritual, and physical, about your sexual activity outside of the context you believe is right. Okay? So what you believe is right is marriage. And let's look at 1 Corinthians 10 and 23. It reminds us that I have the right to do anything you say. I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Okay? So just because you can doesn't mean you should. Don't allow the devil to keep you bound and messed up. That's what he wants to do. He want to control your thoughts. He want to control your actions. He want to make you believe that God doesn't love you, God doesn't care about you, and there's no turning back, that you have to stay messed up in that moment and that mindset and stay where you are. That is not true. We serve a forgiving God. We serve a loving God. Get back up and know that your Father has never left you and he is there always. And just ask God for forgiveness. And we serve a God of grace and mercy. And he is there waiting for you. And so just ask for forgiveness and ask God for the wisdom that you need moving forward to make better choices. And ask God for wisdom to have better friends if those that you have are not serving you in your best interest. Okay. And if we look at First James 1 and 5. First James 1 and 5. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. That's First James 1 and 5. So, and let's say our affirmation. Our affirmation, repeat after me. I honor my convictions without comparison. I trust God's design for my healing. I honor my convictions without comparison. I trust God's design for my healing. And the reflection questions, repeat. Just think about these and try to write the answers down and think about them for the week. Question 1 says, whose voice has influenced your sexual beliefs the most? Whose voice has influenced your sexual beliefs the most? Question 2, what thoughts about sex are truly yours and which were absorbed? What thoughts about sex are truly yours and which were absorbed? Absorbed, I mean, from other people, from your surroundings, from influence from the environment where you were raised or from other people. Right? So just reflect on those for the week and just remember this. You are not late on anything. You are not broken. You are becoming. Right? You and I are on this journey together. And awareness is where healing begins. Okay? So thank you for joining me. This is Sacred and Satisfied. I'm Dr. Belinda Newkirk, and I'll see you next Thursday night.
It's already mine. It's already mine. Never alone. I can go to the throne. He's right beside me.